Welcome to CCN Midday News. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 29th of June. 11 people shot across New York City in less than 12 hours as the shooting spikes. Thousands gather near Denver to demand justice for Elijah McClain. And President Trump retweets a video of a supporter shouting "White Power" at Florida protesters. 17 correction officers have been disciplined a year after a transgender woman's death on Rikers Island. Florida reports more than 8,500 new coronavirus cases as of Sunday. And a letter sent in the utmost confidentiality to Attorney General Bill Barr set in motion an intervention for Michael Flynn. And Nancy Pelosi on reported bounties on U.S. troops. I don't know what the Russians have on the president. Let's get to the news. 11 people were shot in less than 12 hours across New York City. As early as Sunday morning, law enforcement sources told the New York Post. The victims were wounded during 8 shootings in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Queens, and as well as Manhattan between the hours of 8:30 p.m. on Saturday to 5 a.m. Sunday, sources say. Most were expected to survive, but a 30-year-old woman who was shot in the head was rushed to New York City's Hospital Bellevue in Manhattan, where she is in grave condition. In at least 3 incidences, the victims refused to cooperate with the NYPD after being wounded. So the New York Post has been reporting that there have been 11 shootings, 11 people shot in New York in less than 12 hours as shooting spikes across the city. I don't necessarily believe that that is the case. I think there is something more far nefarious to this. For those of you who do recall that the head of the police union said that if the people during the protests for police brutality and all the killings that have happened by the hands of the police due to the George Floyd murder and the protests that have not only spread citywide but nationwide, the head of the police union said under an overpass, when they all gathered, many of the police officers in the union and other officers gathered together behind him, said that if the people do not start to respect the police, things will happen. And now all of a sudden, all these shootings are sparking up. So personally, and these are just my thoughts, I feel like it's a bunch of police killings, dressed regularly or even in uniform, but the people that have witnessed this are threatened with either being jailed or killed or, wounded themselves. So they vow not to speak. Because don't you find it funny that the same people who are asking for the police department to be disbanded or the funding to be taken out of the police department due to the brutality and the authoritative attitude that the police department have, are not telling on the police if in fact they know that there are some policemen involved. It's because it's a lot going on. It's one, to make people scared that, we can't unfund the police departments because this will happen. But I personally think it's the police behind it, to make sure they spread that narrative across not only the city, but of course the news outlets will carry it and then perpetrate that as a reason why the police departments across the nation should not be disfunded. But I believe they should. Thousands of demonstrators gathered outside of Aurora, Colorado's municipal building on Saturday, demanding systematic change and justice in the death of Elijah McClain, a 23-year-old black man who died last year after police applied a chokehold. Saturday's demonstrators, organized by the Denver chapter of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, began with a march and a rally followed by a youth-led protest and a violin vigil, the Denver Post reported. One protester, Frank Williams, age 25, who attended the rally, said he attended to show support and to make sure the fervor continues beyond Saturday. This shouldn't be a moment, Williams said, but this should be a movement. The police in riot gear broke up the protest hours after it began. On Friday, 3 officers involved in McClain's death were reassigned to non-enforcement duties for their own safety, authorities say. But people at Saturday's demonstration said that the police department needs to do more. Okay, so here's my thoughts on Elijah McClain's murder by the hands of the Aurora police. Yes, I say it's a murder because, and this is just my opinion, but simply because it's evidently clear that the police are not trained, at least with certain people, that the police are not trained in conflict solution. They're trained more in take down by any means. Even if you have to kill, you'll be justified in doing so. Because the reports come out that Elijah was an introvert. And usually, and not all the time, but usually, a lot of people who suffer from Asperger's and or autism, I couldn't think of it, autism usually are introverts, which means they stay to themselves, and it takes a while to open up and to gain their trust. But through working with therapists and stuff like that, and even interacting with their own family members, they go on to, live productive lives and have jobs, and they develop relationship with coworkers. It may just be a few, 2 or 3 that they really, really trust in that manner. Apparently he was walking home or, walking somewhere and had a ski mask on. He had a ski mask on because he is anemic, so he does get cold. So that brings him comfort. The police not knowing any of this, not even asking or trying to find out any of this information. Of course, they said they got a report of a suspicious person wearing a ski mask and waving their arms back and forth as they were walking. Now, I don't know when that became a crime, but okay, moving forward. It always seems to be the excuse to where in which it grants them justification to do what they do, because it's always, we got a call, we got a report. The call is never shown. The report is always never given. It's just always, it's said, and that's it. I think that when these so-called reports and calls are made, they should be part of the file that the people get to examine the truth of what actually happened. Personally, I don't think there was probably any call made. I think they saw a young man who was black wearing a ski mask, and they immediately thought he was up to something because probably of the neighborhood in which he was in, that he shouldn't belong there. He was probably stealing. That is usually the problem. Call it what you want. I personally think that that's what happened. The reason why this happened last year, and it is brought to the attention of the people due to the police brutality that has happened amongst the death of George Floyd and many others. But George Floyd, at this point, because everybody got to see it in broad daylight right in front of their faces, has awoken this call for change in action in the police department. I think it's a good thing. I do believe that the police officers should be fired. However, they are on, at this point, they have been kind of reassigned to non-active duty, meaning they're not publicly interacting with anybody, apparently for their safety. But what about the safety of the rest of the people, in the state? How about their safety? Because if these people are going around killing people in the guise of suspicious activity, then maybe we need to be protected from them and they need to be off the force. On Sunday, President Donald Trump thanked some of his supporters in Florida by retweeting a video of people driving golf carts confronting anti-Trump protesters. Early in the video, one of his supposed Trump supporters on a golf cart shouts "White Power" with his fist raised at a protester. Trump retweet was deleted later Sunday morning, though the original tweet still currently exists. 2-minute video that Trump had retweeted identifies the scene as the seniors from the Village in Florida protesting against anti-Trumpers, as an unidentified man and woman drive by in a golf cart decked out with signs that says Trump 2020 and America First. They slow down to address protesters, and one of whom is holding the sign that says "Make America Great Again" as the protester chants "racist" repeatedly. At the duel, the man responds and says "White Power" and raises his fist. The rest of the video shows a continuous contentious verbal confrontation between the two groups. Trump's endorsement of these supporters and the subsequent "White Power" remark comes amidst more of a month of nationwide protests against institutionalized racism and police brutality following the May 25th killing of George Floyd. Let's take a look at the video.
Racist! Your white hood! Where's your white hood? Racist! Racist! Yeah, you got it! You. White power! Yes, there you go, white power. You hear that?
Trump! Oh, we just got the language. Trump!
Nasty language.
Listen to your president if you want nasty language, you idiot.
Officer!
Get back in your car, asshole!
Get back in your car, asshole! Pick on a woman, dickwad. You big boy!
You touch me!
Hey, where's the officer?
Where's the officer? Where's the officer? Come on! We don't need Nazi pig! This is what we are!
Come on in.
No wonder! You beat me up! You can beat me up! You little turd! You fucking turd! Oh, you go! You're a Nazi, racist pig! That's what you are!
We resemble that. We work. We love it.
Trump, 4 more.
We're the minorities that support Trump. Exactly. They don't come out because they will not vote for him.
Where's your white hood? Where's your white hood? Where's your white hood?
Into this a little bit. So of course, this president who loves to race bait and give red meat to his loyal followers, those who believe in separation of the races and so on and so forth, eat it up, and he knows this. So he, being the president, retweeted a tweet video of these anti-Trumpers. There's some sort of parade. It was a parade for Donald Trump's birthday in Florida called the Villas, and they what they've done every year on his birthday is these older people get into golf carts and they have like a little parade procession, holding Trump signs and waving the American flag, so on and so forth. And so there were protesters amidst this group of people. And, they, as you've seen in the video, they had some choice words. And the lady called him, I believe, a Nazi or something. And he said, yeah, that's right, white power, and put his fist up. The president retweeted that. And of course, people ate it up. And then when he got heat from it, or when they said, oh, sir, probably, this will flare up that you are for white supremacy and all this other kind of stuff. He deleted it, of course, but you never delete anything on the internet because somebody's always screenshotting. He deleted it and said that he did not know or did not hear the gentleman say that, which I, of course, don't believe at all, and neither should anybody else. Again, as the saying goes, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Now, you may not want to fully acknowledge it, you may not want to fully accept it, or think a person could be that way, because a lot of times we always look for the better in people, or the greater in some folks. But at what point, what more do we need to basically, he may interact with people of color, he may even do business with people of color if it is of benefit to him, but if he had the choice to do it or not do it, he'd probably choose not to do it if he didn't have to. So I think in those guys, this is where we need to really look at this man and not be blinded to the fact that it is what it is. I mean, make America great again is exactly what it is. Make America white again. Keep America white, or keep white people great. However you want to. That's the whole premise of it. They got it. That's why they flocked to a convention or a rally, even in the midst of this pandemic, because they get it. They know what it's about. Everybody else is trying to, that's not what he means. He means like make America great like Reagan meant it. It's the same thing Reagan meant. It's the way you say things without saying it. So, I mean, pretty much that's what he was saying. For him to retweet that video, which I just played for you all, I don't see anything else but, hey, this is what I'm with. This is, I'm telling you people, I'm here. I'm with you. So, I mean, what more do you need? Republican and or Democrat. That is not somebody that needs to be in the White House. It needs to be the leader of this nation, period. Now, we all have our, our preferences, or we side with this and not with that. But to have someone who is clearly down the line and has said it many of times and used different language to support white supremacy, that basically this is where he stands. I mean, it's no more to be said. We should just do what we need to do in November and vote. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced on Friday that 17 correctional officers will be disciplined following the 2019 death of a transgender woman who died from epileptic seizures while in solitary confinement on Rikers Island. Layleen Petrenko, a Dominican-American who lived with epilepsy and schizophrenia, was incarcerated because she was unable to pay a $500 bail after being arrested on misdemeanor charges. She was only 27 when she died on June 7th of 2019. 3 officers and 1 captain will be suspended without pay immediately. The city said in a statement in which de Blasio promised accountability that the death of Layleen Petrenko was an incredible, painful moment for our city. What happened to Leanne was absolutely unacceptable, and it is critical that there is accountability. Disciplinary actions come weeks after the Bronx DA 6 months investigation found no criminal activity, but they did find a failure on the part of the city's correction officers to follow the Department of Corrections, which is otherwise known as DOC policy. Other investigations found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing, but the DOI investigation did find that the city's correction officers failed to follow the DOC directive that every inmate housed in punitive segregation shall be observed at least every 15 minutes. In this case, however, they allowed 47 minutes to pass in between tours of Ms. Palenko's cell. Okay, and a brief summary on this story about Layleen Petrenko. What more do you expect from people who don't see others as human, who see them as subhuman or something disgusting or less than an animal or a pet that they would cherish? You would find this type of behavior. 17 correctional officers have been in trouble due to the death of this inmate that happened a year ago in Rikers Island, New York. Rikers Island, for those of you who don't know, is a prison in New York City, and it is infamous of brutality and a lot of corruption and things that go on in that prison that have gone on for years. There was a Dominican transgender woman who was imprisoned at Rikers, a prison, not a jail, but a prison, for not being able to post bail for $500. Let's look at that alone. So the person could not post bail for $500 over a charge that they were given. So you sent them to Rikers Island, one of the most infamous jails in New York City, let alone probably all of New York State, which, again, there's a problem with the system, and the system needs to be reformed. And if it needs to be gutted, then so be it, gut it. But there is a huge problem in which people of color, regardless of what color you are, cannot afford the bail. So if they can't afford the bail, even if it's for a small, minute misdemeanor charge, which this was, you send them to a prison, an infamous prison known for brutality and all types of things, for $500. Some things that some people buy furniture with, clothes. I mean, if that doesn't strike something in the rest of humanity, I don't know what will. That this system is that corrupt and set in motion to make sure that there is a funneling of product, meaning bodies, funneling through this system, where in which other people can do the same crime or even worse, and sometimes the judge has even said that they didn't want to ruin that person's the rest of their life with the transgression that they have done, so they gave them a lighter sentence. But the fact that this person who had a misdemeanor charge, who could not afford $500, was then sent to Rikers Island, and who had a history of epilepsy and schizophrenia. Again, when you have people policing who are not familiar and or trained in how to deal with people with different conditions, you get situations like this. they're not charging these officers with any criminality. They're basically just charging them because, oh, you were supposed to check on this patient every 15 minutes and y'all checked on this prisoner 45 or 47 minutes after since the first time you checked on them. That is why we're throwing the book at you, when it should be, obviously, if the person was being treated as they should be treated, then they would have been checked on constantly, being in solitary confinement and all of that. Knowing that there was something abnormal about the inmate should have been the first thing that, okay, we need to keep eyes on this person. But because you don't see that person as a person, you'll get to it when you get to it. And that's what basically led up to this situation, which is sad and unfortunate. But again, you clearly show signs of the reason why you should be disfunded, and I don't see the argument. We need to put the money someplace else. I'm not saying get rid of police altogether, but the amount of funding that they receive, needs to be reduced until they get their act together, because something obviously isn't right. The Florida Department of Health on Sunday reported more than 8,500 new cases of the coronavirus, making the third straight day of more than 8,500 new cases that have been reported. The new cases brings the state's nationwide total to 140,075. Florida is now reporting 3,419 coronavirus-related deaths, which is an increase of 29 since Saturday. Florida cases are at 140,075. The deaths in Florida is at 3,419, and the cases in Central Florida are 22,489. Alcohol consumption at Florida bars have been suspended, and 86 Orlando firefighters have also tested positive for the virus. Some Florida members of Congress called for a mandate. Okay, so here are my thoughts on the Florida Department of Health report of the 8,500 new cases of coronavirus, marking the third straight day of more than 8,500 cases that have been reported. I'll say this. I believe that Florida has always had cases of coronavirus. But of course, as Trump himself said when he was talking about he stopped testing so the numbers would not look bad, those governors and political officials who are entangled with him in some way did the same thing. I believe Governor DeSantis has done the same thing, hid the numbers so it doesn't look that bad, to keep tourism going and make people think that, oh, everything is normal here, to the point where it has now imploded so much that he has to tell the truth and he has to be upfront with the people, because people are dying. I think that's just the state where we're at right now. You look at Texas, same thing. Everybody wanted to go back as business as usual, like, oh, it's nothing over here, everything's fine, that's just a hoax, don't believe the media this, the media that. And now you have to roll back your reopening phases because the hospitals are overflowing. Now, the problem with all of this is, and some people say, well, I don't see what the problem is. What's the problem? The problem is just as simple as this. If there are so many people infected with coronavirus and it becomes an overload for the hospitals and treatment centers, then that means people will die because they will not be able to get treated. And they may not have the coronavirus to the extent of death, but without being treated, because there are people taking up beds or taking up treatment centers or so on and so forth, it will cause more people to die. And, then, of course, then the people start to look inward, and you look at the government or the system, and you may not even look as high as the president. You may just look at your local people and go, hey, what's going on here? So I think people are starting to realize, especially local officials, that, hey, you may rock with this president, you may believe in all he believes in, but at the end of the day, if the ball gets dropped, you're going to be the one holding the ball. And that guy is not going to vouch for you. So I think that's why the governor of Texas said, whoa, wait. We might need to roll this back. And I'm sure other states who, was on this, we're going to keep moving forward, business as usual, will probably start to rethink it too, as the second wave of coronavirus attacks the nation. But we'll see. According to a report from the New York Times, a letter sent in secret to Attorney General Bill Barr asking him to intercede in the case of former Donald Trump aide Mike Flynn set in motion a move by the Justice Department to force a judge to set aside Flynn's guilty pleas. The report notes that Flynn's attorney, who used her appearance on Fox News to get Donald Trump's attention, set off a letter about a year ago asking for Barr to appoint an outsider to look into the case that was already in the sentencing stage. The Times reported asking for the utmost confidentiality. Mrs. Powell's told Mr. Barr that the case against Flynn, the president's former national security advisor, who had pleaded guilty for lying to the FBI, smacked of corruption of our beloved government institutions for what appears to be for political purposes. As the report notes, Barr took up the case that had been led by the Justice Department pursuing Judge Emmett G. Sullivan to set aside the pleas and let Flynn walk. Judge Sullivan, however, suspended his review but has not dismissed the charges, suggesting that the extraordinary legal and political saga is not yet over. The report goes on to point out that critics of Barr's decision are still stunned by the interference in a case that he had already been completed for the most part. Okay, so real quick, Attorney General Bill Barr, who has become the Donald Trump, the president's fixer, taking the place of Michael Flynn, who was the Donald Trump's lawyer, who's now released from jail, but was in jail because he lied to the FBI and covered up a few things and paid some hush money people with campaign funds and so on and so forth. But anyway, Bill Barr got a secret letter from Michael Flynn's lawyer, asking Michael Flynn's lawyer to have the Justice Department basically talk to the Judge Sullivan, to have Judge Sullivan drop the charges and let Flynn walk. Now, the question is, why is there so much of a focus on Flynn? Letting Flynn go, letting Flynn walk. What does Flynn know? What does Michael Flynn know that would dismantle the presidency of Donald Trump? I think he knows a lot. He knows far more than Michael Flynn, because if he could risk Michael Flynn being out there to the wolves, why is it such a thing to let Mike Flynn go? Mike Flynn has some tie somewhere that, if it is exposed, would blow the lid off of everything. It's personally what I believe. Now, moving forward from that, Judge Sullivan who is the judge on the case, and was basically wrapping up the case, his sentencing, because it was basically already done. The only thing that he recommended to Mike Flynn was, hey, I've read the transcripts, I've read the undocumented information, and I believe there is more information that you could give your government, and you need to go back and do that, because right now I see you as a traitor to the United States. And basically telling him in the nicest way possible, if you don't go back and tell what I need you to tell them, I'm going to charge you like a criminal of the United States, like a treasonous criminal of the United States, and you're not gonna like it. So he gave him that opportunity to go back and do whatever and tell whatever truths he needed to tell, and I believe he's done that, or semi. And of course the president has still been pushing to get him released and the charges dropped, because also his other person, what is his name? His name escapes me right now. He's looking to drop his charges as well. Oh gosh, what is that man's name? But anyway, it'll come to me. If you guys know it, pop it in the chat as we talk about this later on. But yeah, he's looking into releasing his charges, but Judge Sullivan was like, I'm not doing that. I have been on this bench and I serve to protect the law, and I'm not going to drop this case. So Judge Sullivan is not budging. Bill Barr has tried to shuffle some things around. He's been doing this the whole time. Once he got in, he said he was not going to interfere in matters concerning President Donald Trump. In his interview phases, he said he was not going to interfere, but apparently he is. He hasn't stopped interfering and trying to clean up for President Donald Trump. So I am very interested in where this goes if Bill Barr gets basically pulled on the rug or called on the carpet for his actions. We still have a Republican-led Senate, so I really don't think that the Senate is really going to do anything, but it will be interesting to see if maybe some senators do turn around and say, hey, you've gone too far at this point. So we'll see. Speaker Nancy Pelosi said on Sunday that she does not know what the Russians have on the president, but suggests that information influenced his administration's response to the U.S. intelligence that Russians offered bounties on American troops in Afghanistan. Pelosi said in ABC This Week that Trump wants to ignore any allegations against Russia after the White House denied a Friday New York Times report that he and Vice President Mike Pence were briefed on the bounties. Excuse me. The president, in a tweet early Sunday, also denied that he had been told about the response of the bounties. The Times reported, citing the White House officials, said that Trump and Pence were both briefed that the Russian operatives offered payment to Taliban-linked militants in Afghanistan to kill coalition forces, including U.S. troops. It also said that the National Security Council held a meeting on the subject back in March. Okay, being that Nancy Pelosi is like number 3 to inherit the presidency of the United States, if in fact the president and vice president succumb to whatever it is that, they may succumb to, the Speaker of the House is the third person in line to succeed the two, the president and the vice president. So the fact that she does not know what the Russians have on the president, I believe is totally false. I believe because it's top secret, or any information that she knows is top secret and is a particular amount of clearance for it, that she's not going to say what it is that she knows. But I believe she does know exactly what information she has. Like I said, I don't know, but I believe she knows. We've always known that President Donald Trump has an affection for the Russian government as well as President Putin. Just last week, before I had discussed that the Russian warplanes close to the borders of Alaska, and all of that is just unheard of. You know, since the Cold War, has there never been where in which Russian anything, as far as ships and or aircraft carriers or planes, have been anywhere near Alaska or the borders between Alaska and Russia at any moment. So the reason or the fact that they are doing this is just kind of, I guess, amping up Cold War kind of antics all over again. And the fact that we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge that this stuff is even happening at this point is a bit alarming. But are you not surprised? They helped him get into the White House. He knows it. They know it. Facebook has helped that man get into the White House. Russia has paid Facebook very handsomely, or whatever information they have on Mark Zuckerberg and whoever else is in Facebook. It must be a lot, because these people are not giving up on making sure that this man remains in office while the Russians run through the rest of the other countries and try to dismantle their democracy, at the same time asking to be included into the G7 summit to make it G8 again because they were kicked out, and all these other things. I just find it a bit crazy. Like I said before, I do believe Nancy Pelosi knows. She just can't say, because she has security clearance just like the president and the vice president. So I do believe there are certain information, certain things she does know, but she can't say, and oh well. But there's just a lot to it's a lot not to pay attention to. It's too much not to pay attention to, and to understand that there is far more going on right now, that we need to be paying attention to all sides. Like, we don't need to lose focus and pay attention to one side more than another. You need to be watching everything, because as you sleep, things are getting dismantled or trying to get dismantled. You had this man Friday sent a brief to the Supreme Court in the middle of the night, right before briefing was closed, or to hand in your brief was closed. And the only person that can do that is this, what is he called? Or she called? Oh gosh, I can't think of it right now. Sorry, it escapes me. But it's a person who basically intercedes from the White House to the Supreme Court, and they can send injunctions to the Supreme Court with a certain amount of time, and within a certain amount of time, that the Supreme Court will look at. And they secretly sent that in the middle of the night to dismantle Obamacare. Now this act, which covers a lot of people, even people who voted for President Trump, which he's been trying to dismantle since he was elected into office, is a bit much. Again, I'm curious to see what these justices do. They had already denied Trump in his pursuit to get rid of DACA recipients. The Supreme Court told him no, he couldn't do that. And the Supreme Court also said that it was unconstitutional to fire people who had different sexual orientations. So that was twice he was denied. But we'll see where this goes. I don't know. It's hard to kind of guess the tea leaves in this one, but like I said, we'll see. Just stay posted. All right. And once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.